Thank you for tuning in to Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy podcast, where we delve into crazy creatures, evading extraterrestrials, horrifying haunted places, the unexplained, and the conspiracies that surround them. The following content will more than likely involve explicit language and materials, so listener discretion is advised. For bonus materials, uncut video versions of the episodes, and other great perks, go on over to patreon.com/cryptids, creeps, and conspiracy. Dollars for disclosure, half Sawbuck Snally, and paranormal posse members will get a shout out on the pod, access to the private Discord server, as well as more perks that you can find in each tier. However, if you are using an iOS application, I suggest that you sign up through a web browser to avoid the 30% fee that is charged through the app that is not at all related to the podcast. You will still be able to listen on the app, even though you sign up through the browser. So grab your rose colored glasses, skeptical suits, and hold onto your butts as we teleport into the realm of the CCC podcast. Hope to see you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Today we have another new guest, so I'm pretty excited. I have been chatting with him for a little bit, and we were able to get him on. It is Alan Arcane with Mysteria Arcana. Welcome to the show. We have, again, everything in the background for all my patrons and anybody watching the video. We have all the sensors set up like normal. I've got my little box going, which has been a little rude but chatty today. So, Alan, I want to give you a moment here to just let everyone know what you do, why you do it, and where to find you. Just a little bit of advertising that I just always throw out for Frizzle at the beginning. So just let us know what you want us to know.
Awesome. Like you said, I'm Alan Arcane, and the new podcast that I just started is called Mysteria Arcana, and you can find that on YouTube, Instagram. That's where I'm mostly, where I do the most of my work is on Instagram, but I have a link tree there that can connect you wherever you want to be connected, but mostly Spotify, YouTube. But it's a new show. It's about all things strange, just like this show. I try to focus on true experiences from people that I know, people who I've interviewed, people who I find online who are sharing experiences, books I've read, things like that. But I cover things from cryptids to ghostly encounters and anything you can think of in between. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I take a detective noir style approach to the show just to kind of differentiate it a little bit. But yeah, it's been a really good time. Like I said, it just started, so I'm about to drop the second episode. But I have been wanting to get more into the community, which has been great. You are awesome, and there's been so much there's been so much positivity and support and a lot of people interested in contributing to the show. So I'm really looking forward to getting started and getting my name out there and just sharing my take on the paranormal world.
Like you said, I try to focus on either things that people have reported or having people on with the firsthand experiences, having people write in, and all of that stuff. So I just want to let everybody know before we start getting into it too, if you missed the beginning part, you don't want to go back and listen, I'm going to he filled out the form because he's awesome. And I'm going to put all the links below. So just go to the description of wherever you're listening, and the links are going to be there where you can find his stuff. So definitely go in there and check it out. We'll do more of this at the end, but I just want to make sure I tell everybody they will be down below. There's not going to be any resources because right now you're my sources. The sources are here. So he's the source. I'm citing him now. But I know that we had talked a little bit back and forth, and I know that you have some stuff that you've got working on. And just so you know, the beginning part of your little movie thing with this really 1920s, like Sherlock Holmes-esque kind of thing is awesome. I love it. I was like, ooh, I feel like I'm watching a movie instead of watching a podcast.
I'm glad you liked it.
But it was awesome. But yeah, we had talked about you had some paranormal encounters at some point. How many of those have you had?
I don't know if I've ever sat down and just counted them out.
And
like I'm sure just like you, probably just over a handful of paranormal encounters that I can attribute to myself. So I'd say maybe less than a dozen, but even
Hey,
just almost a dozen paranormal encounters is quite a bit to some people.
one thing I've noticed with a lot of people, like I said, like us, it seems like there's always one particular event, one encounter, one something that made you go, holy shit, this stuff is real. What's happening? And then it sparks your interest. Do you have one of those moments where you were like, okay, this is getting real. Let's get into it?
Well, I grew up in a very spiritual sort of culture out here
Yep.
in Utah. That's a very spiritual culture out here. I I grew up Mormon, and so I had a lot of experiences
Mhm.
which um, my family may not believe in, or
Yeah.
that I haven't always told them about, for the same reason of, hey, I don't want to be the black sheep. I don't want to be
Hmm.
judged, just like how you
You're
described
evil.
yourself. And
Yeah.
yeah, whatever
You're
it might be.
possessed. You're evil. You're going to
But
burn in hell.
yeah, I think that Mormon culture, you know, it lends itself to a little bit more of a willingness to interact with people on the other side of the veil.
Hmm.
But usually that's in a very wholesome,
Yes.
spiritual context, and not necessarily in a paranormal context. But I would say for my first awakening to this stuff, I mentioned in my first episode, I think I'm the second caller on there. I I didn't introduce myself as Alan Arcane. I just was more telling my story, but almost like I was a caller myself. I think that I may have lived in a haunted house when I was about 5, 6 years old.
Oh.
And so in that first episode, I talk about some of the experiences I had with seeing shadow people moving from room to room. I also had a reoccurring dream of this shadow person chasing me up the stairs. And like sometimes I would, because in the dream, the goal was get up the stairs, get to mom's bed, and you're safe.
Oh yeah, or under the
But
covers, the trope of
right.
everything's safe under the covers.
The problem with that is
Create your
that
own
in the
veil.
dream, I would wake up. Yeah, I would wake up in my bed, and I would feel a presence in the bed next to me. And so I would lift the covers off of this shadow being, and I would see it in the bed next to me. And then that's when the race began. And I would start running all the way
Oh,
up the stairs to try to
nope.
get to my parents' house, or to my parents' room.
Yeah,
And
there's a nope in this
sometimes
right now.
I would sometimes I would make it in the dream to my mom's bed, and then I wake up and be like, "Oh, good, I made it." Or other times, though, I couldn't make it fast enough. I could hear it breathing and running behind me, and it would grab me and wake me up in terror. And sometimes I was just too tired, so I just would start running. I'm like, "I'm just too tired. I can't do it." And I would just stop and listen and wait for it to get me, and then I would wake up. But yeah, pretty
That is
terrifying stuff as a kid when you're 4 or 5 years old.
exactly. So I was laughing. So I don't know what's going on. Did you happen to have a cellar in this house?
Cellar. I was living in the basement of the house, and it was pretty deep basement.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, is there any relevance to the number 42 or 23? Just curious.
42 or 23. I don't know. I'd have to try and
Okay.
put
My
it
thing here
together.
said cellar, which is usually the basement. And it was like you're talking about being in the basement and it's like cellar, but then it gets 42, 23, and then it says hiding, which kind of explains like what you're doing. So that's why I was like, I wonder if the 23
Mhm.
and 42 mean anything because it's already like you're telling the story and I'm on my headphones and this thing's popping in. It's like almost like when you listen to somebody and you repeat what they say so that they understand that you're understanding them. It's almost like it's doing this as you're telling your
Sure.
story. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. I get this. It tracks.
I'll have to remember those numbers, and maybe maybe I'll go check the address of the house or something. But I haven't been
Oh,
there
that'd
so
be
long, I don't
crazy.
actually know the address. Wouldn't that be wild?
That would be wild. Then it was two different voices. Now it's going attic. It was something morning and attic. I don't know. But anyway, so you said that you in your dream you were running to your parents' room, correct? It wasn't that. Okay, it says indeed. Thank you. It's got my back. So, but when you woke up, were you in your parents' bed or did you wake up in your bed after dreaming of being in your parents' bed?
Yeah, I would wake up in my own bed trying to get to my
Okay.
parents' bed.
I was gonna say if you woke up in their bed, I'd be like, ooh, so maybe it wasn't dreaming. But that kind of makes
Yeah.
sense. And as a child,
But it's been so long ago, that's
yeah.
possible.
And so when I told you that when I like virtually my whole life, I have been dealing with this as well and having weird things. It started that the earliest I can remember, I was about 5 or 6 as well. And I don't remember much about it. I had a whole bunch of trauma going on, so it's all kind of a blur. But what I can remember is I remember this basement in my first house that I can remember. And you went downstairs and the washer and dryer was there. And then there was this one door, like a random door that went nowhere. And it even when I would walk by the door, but when it was open and like I started to walk down those stairs, it was like everything stood up. Like everything inside of me was screaming like get out, go away, it's not safe, run. And I like I said, I
Yeah.
lived there from the time I was like 5 or 6 until my teens. And I never wanted to go in that basement. It did not matter how old I was. I just did not want to go down there. But nobody else could understand why I was like that. But I was like, there is something bad down there. And did you
Something
ever,
about basements.
yeah. Well, in most, I've been in basements and been fine. It's just that particular basement. There was something there. And when I was buying a house, I was looking to buy a house. When I was looking around, there was a house, an old house, and that basement was bad. I didn't even make it all the way down the stairs. I was like, whoop, not here. We're not buying this one. Next. Um, so aside from being in your dream, did you get any feelings like that you can remember? I don't know how long you were in this house, but do you remember getting any just bad mojo or anything from the basement?
Well, yeah, so I talk about seeing like dark entities in that
Janet.
story. It- Like it was a big long staircase that led down to that basement, really
Okay.
long. And I think that the light to turn on like there's a little square hallway that connected like the 5 rooms that were down there. And in order to turn the light on, you had to walk all the way down to the bottom of the
Oh,
stairs and then turn
no,
the
no,
light
no,
on. And
no.
so
Oh,
it was just pitch black down there. Maybe not pitch black, but very dark all the
oh,
time.
oh,
And I just remember walking down those stairs and seeing these fast moving shadow things running from room to room in that hallway. And then you flick on the lights and nothing is there. But yeah, I
woo.
mean, that's
Well, at least you didn't flick the lights on
that.
and
And
something was there. That'd have been worse.
but I yeah, I always felt like something was moving out of the corner of my eye. I don't know if you've ever
Hmm.
felt this way, but I feel
Yeah.
like you walk into a room and like some blankets are shifting or moving, or like the
Yes.
curtains are moving, or you feel like you saw somebody duck behind a door or something.
Hmm.
I always
100%.
felt that way in that house. And I'm going to tell this story later on in my podcast. But when I moved back to Idaho for a little while, because all these events happened in Idaho. But when I eventually moved back there and bought my own house in a town not too far from where I grew up, I had a really crazy event happen that kind of reinvigorated my interest in the paranormal.
Ooh.
And I don't know if you want to get into that now, but I could.
Uh, That's up to you. You are the
it
guest. I do have a few more questions about this house though. So whenever you have
Sure,
time.
yeah. Let's hit those first.
Okay. So how long did you live in this house?
I was born there I probably lived there until I was close to 6 years old.
Okay. Okay. So when this all started happening, you weren't there very long afterwards before you moved.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Just curious. Did anyone, I guess at 5 or 6, they wouldn't have been talking to you about it, but did anyone, as you were growing, did you ever bring it up to anyone that was living there with you?
Yeah, I mentioned it to my mom and I said,
Okay.
"Hey, mom, is this house haunted?" And she's, "No, it can't be haunted because the local pastor or bishop of the church, this was his brother's house. And obviously, nothing bad could ever happen
That's my
at a
cat's.
religious person's brother's house."
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
uh,
dude, they want my cat.
she shut it down. They want your cat?
It goes Morticia, which is my cat's name. And then it goes, we want it. Let's go take my cat. Oh God. But okay, so her thought process was that it, not that it wasn't 100%, but that there's no way that it could have been because it belonged to a family member of the pastor, correct?
Which to me is just totally bizarre because it's just because the pastor's religious doesn't mean his brother's super religious. And even if he
Yeah,
was, it doesn't mean that bad things can't be attached to locations.
exactly. But the only thing would be, unless that pastor, maybe it was, if anything happened, the pastor would have, I don't know, exorcised the house or cleansed it or whatever. But if there's no mention of that, then I agree with you. It's not going to make a difference who you are because everybody's different. My family all are religious, religiously go to church, no pun intended. And they do all of that. They sing in the choir. And then there's me that I'm just like, nah, like it just ain't going to happen. My sister is like the lead of the women's ministry or something. And then there's me, and I'm like, nah, like there are ghosts in this house. Oh my gosh, I just had the WAP song, but it was like, "There's some ghosts in this house." Oh, sorry, ADHD brain is working on me right now. But the person you bring it up to never said anything weird happened. No reports from anybody
um,
else.
I think for my mother in particular, I think a lot of times they just overlook anything strange and they
Yeah.
just tell themselves it's not really
Oh, it's
happening or
nothing.
it's just a coincidence.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't
I
know.
hate
I
when they
haven't
do
really
that.
interviewed my family about that locations, but yeah, I agree.
Oh, maybe you could. Maybe there'd be something, but some people are so die hard that nothing's going on. Spooky. That's this definitely. Thank you. But nothing could happen. It's always in their mind, whatever.
Won't understand. Some
Yeah, you don't
people just
understand.
choose to be ignorant.
Yeah.
They don't want to believe because it's
I
easier not to, or
yeah.
because of their faith system doesn't allow them to, or they
Yep.
just say everything's evil and there is no good in the spirit
Yeah.
world. So, which I don't
Sometimes it's
agree with, but
this is all right. All right. But I'm with you. It's like some people are just so dead set on it. And I wonder sometimes if it's, if they give in and they believe that one thing is true and that one thing is happening, then that opens them up to all this other stuff. And like I said, when I said something happened when I was 15 that just rocked my world, I grew up not Mormon, but I was raised in a very religious household. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, all that stuff.
yep,
And
same
when I was
stuff.
15, I was in the driver's seat, and there was, the only way I could describe this thing was it had to have been a demon, because I can sense when
Mm,
people are people. This thing was never human, and we were staring each other down for. It's not like, oh, I blinked and it was gone. No, I blinked and it was still there, and then we had a stare down for
creepy.
at least a solid minute or two before I closed my eyes and said, "You've got to go. Like you got to get out of here. Like I don't want you here. Just go away." But when I saw
Wow.
that and I could not deny it, it shattered everything. Like all of my beliefs. 'Cause I'm like, wait, if that happened, then everything I was told is a lie. Everything. Which is not necessarily true, because if you think about it, even in Christianity, you have angels and you have demons. Now, they don't acknowledge that the demons can interact with you,
Right.
but they sure as hell tell you that the angels can. But the way I look at it is you can't have one without the other. So
Yep,
if you can have these
absolutely.
communications with angels and all of that, then by golly, the demons can too. They don't want to talk about that because that's going to make you sound crazy or whatever. But it shattered everything. So I think a lot of times people deny it because to them it's, if I believe this, then everything my entire life has been a lie. And they just
Sure.
refuse to, it would
Yeah.
shatter everything. But anyway.
Yeah, and that is scary for some people to have their worldview questioned or question
Rapture
it
the booty.
themselves.
We got pervy Paul in here. He goes, rapture booty. I was like, oh,
back
is
at
that
it.
like, would that be like the Mormon way of saying raise your butt? I'm sorry.
Yeah, twerk it or whatever.
Twerk it, yeah. Oh, geez, rapture your booty.
That's too funny.
I can see that. Look, they're coming down to your levels. What's happening? They are relating to you. Is what's going on right now. That's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
sorry.
They're like, we got to speak to
I just
him
thought
in
that
a
was funny.
language that he understands.
Yeah. He said Mormon. We can't say get it.
As far as other paranormal experiences go, do you have experiences with cryptids or aliens or Bigfoot or anything of that nature outside of the ghosts and the demons?
Cryptids, no. So I've been in the woods and had some weird feelings, but I've never had, it's just interesting. So I've never had anything visual happen or physical happen to me monster wise. I am so skeptical on the alien thing. I had an experience, I guess you could call it an experience, that if you think of it from a logical investigator standpoint, I was abducted. It was very similar to a typical abduction, but a little different. But the different is what made it seem so real. But again, I am very skeptical. I was like, but I'm still in my head. I'm going, was it just a dream? But then I'm like, it was very real for a dream. You have one.
Well, when it comes to my own,
we can talk about that another time.
I do have one. Mine's very brief, and I'll tell it because I don't have any memory if it even happened. Because like yours, I was in a dream state, and at least I think I was. So I woke up in the middle of the night to this bright blue light coming from across the hall in my parents' room. And usually I slept with my door open, my parents slept with their door open. And this bright light, and it wasn't just a light, it was like this really loud vibrating sound. I thought it was like, it sounded like a train trying to come through the house or like a helicopter was landing on the house. It was so loud and just a lot of vibration and this bright blue light. And so I remember getting up and being freaked out and walking into my parents' room thinking, how come not everybody's up and rushing the window right now to see what's going on? How come I'm the only one? And I remember going to their window, looking at that bright light, and then I remember nothing. And I woke up the next day and I asked my mom, I'm like, Mom, do you remember this happening last night? Did you hear anything or feel anything? She's, nope, you're probably just dreaming. Typical response from my mom.
Dang it. So,
but it felt
so when
very
you disappeared
real,
and woke back
so
up,
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So when I have these dreams that are like premonition, there's a difference. I can feel the difference when it is a dream that is a premonition and when it's just a vivid dream or if it's just a random bizarre dream. Like I can feel that I know. And with mine, it felt like it was one of the dreams that it was real. And so when you said you saw the light and then boom. Did you wake up in your bed, or did you wake up standing in the same spot and then go to bed?
No, I woke up in my bed the next morning. So
Oh,
that's why it's hard to know whether or not this was a dream, but it didn't feel like a dream. It
oh,
felt like
missing
reality.
time, Alan, missing time. That is poster. Okay, as you're describing this, I was so hardcore picturing the abduction from the X Files when the sister's taken, only not at a window. So, have you seen that? The abduction
Oh,
scene?
yes, absolutely.
So it is that very bright, it's like that vibrating, and he's, what the heck? And the next thing he knows, there's this super bright light that's like all you can see, and then poof, like she disappears, and then he's
Yeah.
like up and she's gone. It very
That,
much so
that's funny. I've
reminds
never
me of
actually
that.
compared that to my experience.
But that was
Yeah,
like the
that's
visual that
funny.
I was picturing, is that almost like a spotlight, almost like you would think that somebody in your house was, SWAT was coming. The helicopter sound with
Yes.
the vibration, and then the super
Uh-huh.
super bright. And did the light move at all? Was it like a swooping, or did it just show up real bright and then you wouldn't have seen it disappear because you essentially disappeared?
It was just a constant light and a
Okay.
constant rumbling, and the house was almost shaking. I almost felt like an
Yeah.
earthquake. It was so loud and
It sounds
just
pretty
crazy, and I
legitimate to
couldn't
me.
believe that nobody else. It's just strange that nobody else woke up. It's strange that
That's,
nobody else remembered this.
to me, that is one of the biggest indicators, because it happens in so many abduction scenarios. It's almost as if everyone else gets paralyzed. They have no idea what's happening
Yeah.
except the victim. Only the abductee
Yeah.
can move or do anything. And I have heard so many accounts that are like that. So this sounds very much so like a typical abduction. Just saying.
It might have been. I'm not sure. I also think about getting hypnosis done to see if I can maybe
A
unlock those
regression?
memories. But a part of, yeah, and just
Yep.
seeing if there was anything, if anything actually happened. Then there's that
But
part
do
of
you
me.
want
It's like,
to?
man, once you open that box up, you don't
Yep.
know, you
You
don't know
can't
how you're gonna
unring that
react,
bell.
because yes, exactly, and that's a little bit scary.
Oh, I've had some stuff where it's like it blanks out and you're like, something clearly happened in, just in regular life. Like I said, I've had some pretty traumatic experiences, and I generally blank things out, as most humans do. But it's like, whatever happened, it messed with you. You have triggers about certain things, or certain things just get under your skin, or you don't even know until it happens, and you have a trauma response to something that you don't even know what caused it. And
Mm,
every time, it's blank. So then you're like, I'm messed up, right? This is causing problems. But how more messed up would I be if I actually knew what happened to me? You don't
right.
know. Are you better off not knowing because
Yeah.
your brain's like, hey, you can't handle this, so we're just going to erase it? Almost like Pandora's box. We're going to put it in Pandora's
Right.
box. Just don't look in there. Because again, you can't unring a
Yep.
bell.
Yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
I
Now,
I
I
don't
don't know if
know.
I would do it.
I go back and forth.
Yeah, I'm like,
You're not messed up after your experience, so maybe I should do
oh,
it
that's
and just
true.
like face it, and maybe
Well,
I
but
don't
so
know.
much weird stuff happens that I feel like I'm like a prerequisite to just being like I have stuff, like I will be in a room and the lights will flicker, things will come off the wall, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. And everybody else is freaked out. I'm like, nah, it happens all the time. So maybe that's why I was allowed to remember. It says
Yeah.
cryptid. So,
Cryptid,
I mean,
yes.
yeah,
I'll
because
tell you my
cryptid.
cryptid experience.
Oh, okay. Apparently it wants to know. So bring it on.
So I only have, yeah, I only have this one, and it's not that crazy. But right now, I'm in Utah at my family's cabin they have up in the mountains of Provo Canyon, and it's beautiful
I feel
country
like
up
I've heard
here,
of that place
but it's
before.
very, very. It's where the Sundance is, which is the Sundance Film Festivals are pretty popular. Anyway, so and I think that there has been some other sightings up here
Mm.
of the big man himself. But my experience was I was here, other family members were here, and sometimes I can be a bit of a night owl. I was reading, and all
Same.
of a sudden I start hearing this sound, and the sound's kind of carrying. And I thought, man, what, somebody's kid is crying or something, or really wailing.
Oh
And
no.
I'm like, what is that? And and I'm like, it's not coming from inside the house. So I open my window, and all of a sudden I can hear the sound a little bit more clearly. And it sounds like this large, long, wailing sound carrying over the mountain of something
Mm.
that's almost sounds like it was lamenting or something. But it was this strange, guttural kind of screaming that was carrying, and I was hearing it, and it was doing it in these
Because
long
absolutely.
bursts of, yeah, and it was doing it in these long bursts of, man, no human could just
Wail
hold
like
that
that.
screaming wail, yeah, for that long and that deep and that powerful. I'm way up in the
Yeah.
mountains, and I could tell that this was very far away, and I just kept hearing it. And growing up in the church, Mormonism's very tied to scouting. So I have a lot of outdoorsman skills as well
Yeah.
because I grew up in that program. I know my animals. I've hunted all my life, and I can identify the animals in this area. And this thing I was hearing just was not in my repertoire of animals that I could
Hmm.
identify. And I went to the internet right away looking for sounds of animals that maybe I could have been mistaking it for. And the closest
Yeah.
thing that I ever found was Bigfoot recordings. So,
Interesting. So when I hear people talk about like a crying in the woods, I immediately go to like bobcat, mountain lion, because they
right,
sound like women or children screaming. It's
right.
very
But this
ominous
sounded
and
like
it's
a
very
man.
yeah, it's very unnerving to hear that screaming sound, especially like if it's in
Yes.
an octave that is not familiar. And to me, when you, which I'm going to ask too, I guess I could just go ahead and ask. Sometimes I feel that it's almost like their yells are not just auditory. There's some sort of like infrasound attached to it. So it's not
Infrasound.
just that you're hearing it, you are feeling it. Like that vibration, you can feel it to your core when you're hearing these things scream. Did
Right.
you get that at all where it was not just an auditory response? It was like you were like feeling it, like vibrations.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, it felt different. It felt different, and it felt scary.
Yeah.
And I don't always attribute Bigfoot to scary, but
Oh, I do.
it
Those things
was
are monsters.
unnerving and
Those
yeah,
are animals that will eat your
but it was
soul.
unnerving. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and a lot of people think that Bigfoot is more of a spiritual being
Yes.
rather than a physical being. So who knows?
I think maybe it's a little, I lean towards physical with what we would attribute to supernatural abilities.
Sure,
But
or maybe
the
even
same thing can be said about
interdimensional.
me. I am a person, but some of the stuff that I do is not natural. So I look at
Right.
them kind of like that, which is why I tell people I will never go squatching. I can set off my K2 meter. It's funny. When I'm upset or like really upset or angry, weird stuff, like electrical stuff does not work right. And I think I like there's something going on, which I think a lot of people that can see or hear or do different things, I feel like we have some kind of extra sensory thing, and that's how they can sense us. Like they know, like ghosts know, spirits know, things know. When it's almost like there's 20 people in a room and one of them can hear or see or whatever, then they're going to be like, I'm going to, why waste my time with these 20 people when I know I can tell this person could hear me, this person could see me, this person can know that I am here. it's almost like a beacon, right? Like you're a lighthouse in the dark for these things. And I feel
Hmm.
that Bigfoot, Dogman, those two in particular, I feel like those have that, just like I said, as they can communicate and send that sound out, they could use it as echolocation or just to know the other ones are close, or they know when people are close. They know they can evade things because they can feel them there, whether they're
Sure.
animalistic or not. They can feel it. So I'm thinking, you drop me in the woods and I'm a beacon. Hell no. I know you guys want to see Bigfoot,
They're
but
coming
I
for
do
you.
not. Yeah, I do not want to. I don't want to be Bigfoot's wife or whatever.
The-
Not going to
yeah,
happen.
they're gonna find you.
And that's the way I feel. But yours was just a cry, right? You heard it, but you didn't see anything.
Mm,
Because you said it was dark,
no,
right?
I didn't see anything. Yeah, it was the middle of the night. It was like
Yeah.
midnight or something like that. Everybody else was sleeping, and I wasn't gonna wake anybody else to be like, "Hey, can you hear this crazy sound?"
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just me hearing that. It was like a wailing moan. It's real hard to
Mm-hmm.
describe, but it was at a very deep octave for a very long time, and on and off. It would go for a long time and then taper off and then start up again and then taper off. So it was strange.
So I'm not good with
Um,
geography. Bear with me here. Utah, isn't that like north on the US scale?
Northwest. Mm,
Oh,
it's just a couple of states away from the West Coast.
so what are your thoughts on Wendigo? Because they're primarily up, aren't they, in like
Wendigo.
Montana and like southern Canada, northern US?
Yeah, they're.
I think I threw
Yeah, I
you with
think
that one, didn't I?
Wendigo
Sorry.
comes. No, it's
Like,
okay.
here,
I'm
let me
just trying to
throw this
remember
ball
my
at you here.
Wendigo lore. I haven't read up on it in a long time, but it seems like Wendigo comes from the Native American tribes, actually a little bit more south out of New Mexico and Nevada, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, well, I just did
But
them on an
it,
episode with Where the Weird Ones Are, and most of the accounts that I found were all primarily in the colder sections, the northern parts of the states. I didn't really
oh,
find a lot in
yes,
southern.
you're right. I was mixing them up with skinwalkers. That's what I was thinking.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yes, you're right. It is northern Canada, Wendigo,
Mhm.
because it's associated with
Winter.
feeding on human flesh and
Mhm.
freezing to death in winter. Yeah, absolutely.
Because
So,
that's why I was like, well,
yeah,
what are
I
the
mean,
odds that it could
absolutely.
be either? Mm.
I'm not too far from Skinwalker Ranch, if you've heard of
Oh,
that.
well, who has
Uh,
it, right?
that's just a couple of mountains away.
Just a couple of mountains away. That is
Yeah,
such a
so
Utah thing. Just a couple of mountains away as the crow flies.
yeah,
Which,
as the crow flies, that's right. So it's Utah's a very interesting, very haunted place, and it has a lot
Mhm.
of cryptid sightings all on its own. And I think, and we'll have to look into this, but I think that Provo and Provo Canyon has quite a few sightings. Even I think some videotape of the big man himself from up here. So you'll have to
I
check
mean,
that out.
I swear I have heard of this place. I can't put my finger on where, but I've the name is so familiar to me. And did this only happen on one occasion or did you ever hear it again?
No, only one occasion.
Okay.
It's the only time I've ever heard it. But there's we have another cabin a little bit lower down that was my great great grandmother's, and we rent that out. And there has been some reports of like more paranormal experiences there, which is common. Sometimes I wonder, since we rent it out, if people are there, like, hey, we're in a creepy old cabin, let's get the Ouija board out, and then
Oh no.
they might bring some of that. Yeah, they might bring
Oh,
some of
that's the
that
last
bad
thing you want to do.
juju
No
in,
Ouija
and
boards.
it lingers. Yeah,
No
no
Ouija
Ouija
boards.
boards at the cabin
People,
house, but I'm afraid people are doing it.
yeah, we never know, right? You don't know what they're doing down there. It's not like you have cameras. I don't think that's legal. I don't
No,
know. But
no, we
yeah.
don't.
So what I think that is so interesting is, like you said, there's a lot of reports up there, and a lot of people. I have my thought process on it. So it primarily is a lesser dense population in these areas, and yet there are still so many
Hmm.
reports, and a lot of people are like, oh, they just make it up or whatever. But the way I look at it is, if there is a densely populated area, if you are a creature of any kind, you avoid it. You avoid it. It's why you don't see deer.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't say that. Some towns you can see deer, but if you're in New York City, you're not going to see a deer or a rabbit or something like that. You're going to see things that can fly
Right.
away, like pigeons and stuff like that. But out there, because it is less dense, I mean, there's obviously population, but it's less dense, so they have more room to run, and you are more likely to see something if there are more there. In my thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. Deeper in the mountains, and but still, it's not too far away from Provo, which is a large town. And there are a few cabins up here, but it is pretty deep in the
Mhm.
mountains, and these mountains are vast and huge. And there's plenty of wilderness up here.
Yeah.
It's not like you could just hike up this mountain in one day. It's absolutely massive, and there's so much just wild brush and trees
Oh, yeah, like,
and
perfect spot.
rocks. It's incredible. Oh yeah,
It's like
yeah.
the
Anything
perfect
could be up
atmosphere
here.
for a critter that you don't know about.
Yes, yeah,
Multiple
absolutely.
critters that you don't know about.
Let me. I was just thinking about my. I was thinking about your ex-husband's story about
Mhm.
the treadmill. And when I moved back to Idaho, I had a quick weird experience there
Ooh.
where I I was playing video games at night. We got to get that game time
Yeah.
in sometimes. And I'm sitting there and I'm playing and I have all the lights off because I like to play in the dark. And all of a
Man.
sudden, the light behind me in the kitchen
Sorry.
turns on, and that's okay. And
I'm like, "Me too."
the that light, all of a sudden, it turned on behind me, and I'm like, "What the heck? Like, why
Nope.
did that just turn on?" And I'm like, I thought that lamp, because it was just a lamp I had set in the kitchen area. I'm like, I don't even remember plugging that in. So I get up and I walk over there. Sure enough, that lamp isn't even plugged into the wall. And it had turned on for
Oh,
a good couple
hell.
of seconds and then turned off. Yeah, it was pretty wild. And
That
then
is
in that same house, I had
sorry, I'm doing the mind blown sign
mind
for anybody who's
blowing.
not watching the video. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just a little apartment that when I first got married, that's where I was I was at in our first place. And I had another experience there, and I was sleeping and my wife was sleeping next to me, and I had just woke up and I'm like, "Oh, I got to get up. I got to go to work," but you don't want to do it. So you're just waiting out the clock until that alarm goes off.
Yep.
And anyway, I I'm laying there dreading going to work, and then all of a sudden, this mischievous little female voice gets right up next to me in my
Ooh.
ear, and she says, "You're gonna be late," and that woke
Oh,
me
that
up.
is cringeworthy.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
at
I
least
was
it was
like, "Oh, I
helpful.
gotta go to work." Yeah,
I mean,
and I
at
did
least it
not
was
tell my
being
wife about
positive.
that.
It was helping you. What if it
Yeah,
was but you didn't see anything, it was just a voice.
just a voice. You just whispered in my ear,
Okay.
"Ooh, you're gonna be late."
I
Yeah.
just did an episode on a succubus. So
Mm.
that's why I was like, "Ooh, did you see it?" But
Yeah.
oh, that's just ugh. It's almost worse. I feel like hearing it and not seeing it, I think is sometimes worse.
Yeah, and I have a couple of stories like that, hearing these disembodied voices, and like you, I was like, "Oh my god, am I going
Am I
insane? Am
nuts?
I crazy? Do I need to see a doctor?" Because I can think of 3 occasions, that being one of them, where it's happened to me, and,
Oh,
I just think I'm going crazy, and
yeah.
it scares you because you don't wanna be you don't want to go nuts. Who does?
Yeah.
But
It makes you feel very
yeah.
uneasy. It definitely makes you
Hmm.
question your reality. It because then it's, am I crazy? Is this in my head? Because at that point, you've probably already heard or seen multiple things. And you're like, am I really losing my mind? It's like you're literally getting gaslit by a ghost. They're driving you
Yeah.
crazy. You're like, is this real? What is reality? What's happening? Says I can't get through.
Yeah.
And
you know,
I just,
let me tell you just one more little story about that, because I there was this time that I felt like I was actually under attack, and this has never happened before or since this. But I was young; I was maybe 18, and I was trying to sleep, and I had a lot on my mind, and all of a sudden, I felt like there was a room full of people just talking at me,
oh,
just talking, and
mm, mm,
they
mm.
wouldn't leave, and they just kept talking, and it was the middle of the night, and I'm like, I have to go to sleep. What is this? I'm going insane. I was so scared that I was coming down with some sort of condition, and
Oh,
it was very. So I was just praying to God that these voices would go away, and eventually they did. But I was really nervous after that experience that I was having some sort of mental break, or that I had some sort of condition like schizophrenia or something. But it's never happened again like that.
oh. But okay, again, you couldn't see it. It was just voices.
Just voices, like a room full of people talking in my ear
And do you happen to
for a
know
long
if
time.
there was any history of the land or anything that you were living on? Any inkling? Because I know out there, especially, was this a Utah or an Idaho thing?
This was up in Idaho, but this wasn't too far. We spoke about the Bear River Massacre. This was only a few
Yes,
miles away from where the Bear River Massacre happened. So,
because I'm just
maybe
thinking
maybe it was
too,
something like that.
if there was a burial something that somebody doesn't know about, and maybe how long did you live there?
At that house, my parents still have a house down there. But at that particular house, I was only there for a couple years before my parents built a different home away from there.
Uh, do you remember when it was in comparison to the massacre as far as the date? Like the month and day, not the year.
No,
Okay.
I couldn't tell you.
Because
No.
the way I feel is I know that there's different thought processes, and I feel as though when something happens and it's something so bad that these things all this negative energy is there and it imprints on the land or the building or whatever is happening, to me that burst of energy is stronger on that day. So say it says it's obvious. Okay, thank you. But say it's January 1st. Something horrible happens on January 1st. And some people believe that you could have hauntings all year round and all of that stuff, which I totally think that could happen. But I feel like anytime around or on January 1st is going to be like that veil comes down because it's like an anniversary. So it gets a little thinner. More things can get through. They can get through
Mm,
clearer. It's like when people die and they're like, oh, you just remember their birthday. But I was like, maybe they can reach out to you more. Or you'll have a wife dies and then a year, like on the anniversary of her death, the husband goes. And it's sweet but creepy. But I'm like, what if, so she dies and it imprints that negative, sometimes it's not negative, maybe she's sick. But anyway, it it notes that date. So then when that date rolls around again, that veil is thinner. And maybe if the husband's older and stuff like that, I almost feel, what if she or that person could come closer and almost like reaching out? It's okay. I can help you. Like I can guide you to the other side. Like you can come with me. And so they
mm,
can get a little bit more of that feeling. And even if the person doesn't mentally know, I sometimes feel that your soul will know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Almost like they're gonna
Yeah,
come
absolutely.
guide you, and it's like, okay, it's safe, and you're like, okay, I'm ready, and then you like, I'll go with you, kind of situation. Or they die
Mm,
around the same time because there's also that buffer zone that people believe that once it happens, you have a X amount of time span where things are really just pumping full, and then it'll like taper off. But I was wondering if maybe it was around that time, because who knows? I don't know. Nobody really knows. A ghost could die and maybe they can hitchhike. Maybe they can walk 5 miles. We don't know. They might be stuck to the building
yeah.
and they can't leave. It might be like a Beetlejuice situation. Where you open the door and all of a sudden you're in like another dimension.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, hold on, I gotta stay in the house. Gotcha. But we don't know. You never know. And
Right.
then if they're tied to something that's not the land, essentially you're saying that it can move around, like these haunted cars
Yeah.
or an airplane or a bus, stuff like that. Because then they can travel, right? Essentially, they can travel, but maybe they're tied to the
Right.
vehicle, maybe they're not. Maybe they have you
Yeah.
have a leash and you're like, okay, you can go 100 yards from wherever the bus is at, but nobody knows. I think they
Right.
probably stay
There's so many
close
different
because the
possibilities.
energy, yeah, the energy level, I feel like the supply of whatever happened is what's going to be powering essentially these spirits. So I feel like even if they were to travel, the farther they go, the weaker they're going to be, if that's the case. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. Everything's just theory. But to me, that would make sense. And what if it was around the anniversary date and it was just that they things have happened to you in the past? Maybe you do have some sort of, I don't know, like a pulse or something that they could identify. Because also, if it's very
Right.
vast and there's not a lot of population, it might be even harder to find. They might be like, you really stuck out because there's not that many people, and then through those not many people, there's not as many people that could feel it or see him or hear him. And maybe they were
Right.
trying to tell you something, but you couldn't make sense of it because it was all blurred together. And it was like, okay, we're all trying to get our message in because we only have X amount of time. Hurry up, you got 30 seconds to tell me everything you want to know.
Right. Yeah.
That kind
Well,
of situation.
I do have I do have a theory oh, that I've thought about maybe, and I like your angle that you're working there as well because it absolutely could have been like a whole bunch of spirits that had been lingering because I couldn't understand anything they were saying. It's possible they could
Mhm.
have been the Native Americans from that massacre.
Warning. Next, we briefly discuss a child predator. Please skip ahead if this is a trigger.
But at the time, I was very religious and I had this mentor that was a higher up in the local branch of my church, and he was what they call like a second counselor to the
Mhm.
pastor or the bishop there.
Second in
And
command.
he was very popular. Yeah, everybody liked him. He was very
Mhm.
charismatic. And it turned out that this individual who I was very close with was actually taking advantage of little girls and stuff. And he was a pedophile. And I don't know if you have to, yeah. And I don't know if you have to beep that word out, but he was a bad dude. And I
Oh,
was very
I don't
close to him,
usually.
and I wondered if it bleep things out.
Well, sometimes I
But
do, but
I
so right before
wondered,
you told me this, it said granddaughter, and then it says frightened. Like
yeah,
before you, right when
yeah.
you started, it said
Well,
granddaughter, and then whenever you brought up what was happening, it goes frightened. Yeah.
yeah, it was a bad
Mm.
thing. And I didn't find out till years later that he was doing those things. But it's possible that he was trying to manipulate me, trying to groom
Oh,
me,
maybe they were warning you.
so that yeah,
Well,
and that's what I was thinking. It was
but
like
if it was mainly women
maybe they
or
came to
girls.
me. I don't know. It was just a bunch of people speaking in my mind. You mean, but it's possible that he was doing it to boys as well. You mean this
Yeah, I
individual
meant like
when
maybe
it
his
comes
victims
to
were
advantage people?
female. But you
I
said the
don't know,
voices, you couldn't tell if they were male or
but maybe
female,
they I
like
can
the voices you
no, I
heard.
couldn't tell. All I
Okay.
yeah, no, I couldn't tell what the voices were, but it almost felt like a spiritual attack on me, but maybe it
Hmm.
was more of like a warning. Okay, you're in danger. You're not in a good
Mhm.
place. Something along those lines. I really don't know, but it was pretty scary.
That is exceptionally creepy. Yeah, one of the reasons I quit going to church primarily back in the day, I went to a youth group religiously, no pun intended, with a friend of mine. And I was 14 and our youth leader was like 35 or something. And we were quote unquote playing this game that involved being in the dark. And it was basically the
Mm,
backwards of hide and go seek. And he found where I was at and like just smooched me. I was 14. And
jeez.
immediately I was like, what is happening? Get off me. And I found out later that it had been a problem and nobody had addressed it.
Of course.
And it's just, and after that, I was like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I'm good. You can have your Holy Bible or whatever you want to do. I don't care what you got, but I don't want it because clearly it's not true. And okay, at least it wasn't in that case. I can't, one bad apple spoils the bunch sometimes. All right. But what I was
I
wondering
agree.
is
I totally agree.
when you, okay, so when you heard the voices, I know with me, sometimes when I hear something or I feel something, like I said, you could get that mental image. Did you get any type of uh guesstimate of whether it was old or young, or if they were old or young, or a mix, or anything?
No, it felt like a mix of people. I felt, like I said, like a room full of people just
Mm.
relentlessly talking at me, but none of them making any sense, and all of them talking over each other. And it was just very
What
upsetting.
if they weren't talking? What if they were chanting or praying?
Possibility, but
Just
they
throwing that out
weren't
there.
saying the same thing.
They
Um,
wouldn't have to. What if it
no.
could, they don't have to say the same thing? Everybody prays different, right? If you put, it says run
Mm.
now. If you put five people in a group and you say pray, just pray out loud, go. None of them probably are going to have
Right,
the same prayer. So what if it's a
right.
mixture of,
Yeah.
it could have been Native Americans and people like in the Amish communities, or people that are just Christian. It could have been a mix of everybody, and maybe the gibberish was that they were all mixing together, or maybe it was in languages that you didn't understand and that's why you didn't understand it.
All of the
Like,
things coming through at the same time.
yes, but they were all trying, maybe they were trying to protect you, like I said, or like maybe warn you, like you said. But after that, were you still around that thing? We're just going to call that thing a thing. He's not a person anymore. Were you still around
Um,
them?
no, no, I left. I left and I lived in Hawaii for a couple of years after that.
Any reason why
Um,
you left?
so I I went and I served an LDS mission. So I went out and was knocking doors for the church. But that's why I left. And I actually found out there
They can't see
that
me
he
doing my
had been
dance. I'm
doing
like, ooh,
those
ooh, ooh,
things.
ooh, ooh, ooh. Because what if that was a protection, or they were speaking something onto you, and maybe had you been thinking about but hadn't decided yet if you were going to Hawaii? Or did you have the
Right. No.
idea
Yeah, that
after?
would have been right. Yeah, that would have been right at the time that I was deciding if I was going to go out there or not. So,
Maybe that was literally a whisper in your ear to plant, go now, go, run, get away. Which actually is funny. My
yeah.
app just said run now. So what if that's, maybe that's what they were doing? Maybe it was like when you tell yourself something so many times that you believe it. What if they were
Right.
trying to pressure you into, you need to get out of here, it is not safe? Just
Yeah.
a thought.
I definitely agree. It
I
could
like
have
to
been that
think that
way.
not all spirits are
Well,
bad.
no,
Sometimes
I
I don't want you
totally
late for
agree.
work.
And, yeah. And I felt You talked about the difference between demons and spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
I think that there is a distinct difference between maybe someone who is past and is lingering, or something that has always been here that is a evil at its core. Yeah, I think that there
Yes.
are both on this plane, and I think that the veil can be thinned,
Mhm.
and you can encounter one or the other. And I think that certain practices
100%.
bring certain types, like we talked about the
Mhm.
Ouija board. I feel like that's more of a magnet for
Demon.
like evil spirits or demons
Mhm.
that are attracted to that sort of thing, rather
I
than
think
if
they use it.
you're, yeah,
You might be
absolutely.
looking for Great
And
Aunt Gertrude,
that's
and it knows it. In my
yeah,
opinion,
and
these
it
things
will deceive you.
just because it is evil does not mean that it always portrays itself as evil. Now, if something is good, it's only going to want to portray itself as what it is because it's not causing you harm. The goal is not to harm you. But if something is evil, think about people. If these, to me, yes, when you are in the presence of something dark and something evil, as an empath, you can sense if there was ever any humanity in whatever is around you. And sometimes there isn't. There was never a humanity in it.
Right.
It's literally void of anything that makes you feel like a human. And
Hmm.
sometimes I feel that, but knows that I totally just blanked out for a second. Oh, wow. Okay. But these things, and I totally lost where I was going with that. I am so sorry. What were we talking about?
No, that's okay. So I no, I agree with you. To
Like,
say
it literally
you,
says,
you're
move
probably
over.
getting
It's like, move over.
yeah, you're probably getting my intentions of, "No, no, we've been on
No,
here for a long time, we
I
better go,"
really was
but,
just like,
uh
I was going somewhere and I felt like it was important. And then I just, oh, if something,
blanked it.
people, see, I just had to backtrack. ADHD brain is saying leave here. So something I think just doesn't want us in here. But if something is evil, just like a person, if you have a sociopath or a narcissist or whatever, you are not going to know. You're not going to know. Bundy, Dahmer, Kemper,
Right.
you are not
Mhm.
going to know that these things are monsters because they are going to put on a show. They're going to put on a facade. And I believe that things that are evil are the same. If it
Yeah.
is something good, it is only going to be, oh, I just got goosebumps everywhere. If it is something good, it is going to be what it is because it has no reason to lie to you. But if something evil wants something, it is going to be whatever it is that you're looking for. And by internet, I told you. I told
I'm
you it was
still
going to
here,
happen.
I'm around.
My thing goes unstable. Click. I was like, hello. But yeah. So sorry. That's yeah.
No, I get it. You should check out my first episode, and your listeners should check out my first episode, because there is a Ouija board experience there,
Mm,
that when I did an interview with a lady, she told me her experience, and it is pretty terrifying. And that was a firsthand account from that lady that I got. But thank you so much for letting me be on your show and
oh, it was
talking
my
with me,
pleasure.
and I look forward to watching more of your show, and I hope that people will find mine as well, and will continue to grow in this community.
Oh, say oh my gosh, it's definitely been a blast. I love hearing super crazy stuff, and you got some frightening shit. And just again, everybody, Mysteria Arcana, go check it out. Like, share. I know, especially if you're just getting into the realm, help them out. By the way, your voice is phenomenal for a podcast. It's just awesome. I don't even know what you look like,
Thank you.
but your voice just it fits very well. I used to tell everybody I have a face for radio. But again, in the description, you can find the links, everything, review, but only 5-star reviews for people that are on my show because we rock. But
That's
that being
right.
said, I appreciate you being here. And again, everybody go check it out. And until next time, we'll see you.
Peace. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy. If you wouldn't mind, please take a moment and give the show a 5-star review wherever you're listening. I know it might not seem like much, but it greatly helps the show and allows people to find us more easily. Also, head on over to www.patreon.com/Cryptids, Creeps, and Conspiracy and subscribe to any of the tiers. Members of the Big Show tier get bonus materials, personalized shoutouts on the pod, ad-free episodes, access to the private Discord server, quarterly appreciation gifts, and a chance to be on the show. Not to mention video versions of the episode. Before you go, don't forget to click the link in the description and grab yourself or someone you know some self-designed merch by me, or make a donation to help keep the show going and fund future events and investigations. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Threads, and TikTok. If you have any questions, topic recommendations, or personal encounters, please send them to cryptidscreepsandconspiracy@gmail.com or submit them through the contact form at www.cryptidscreepsandconspiracy.com. I would love to hear from you and share your experiences on a listener episode. Just make sure that you specify that I have permission to add your encounter to the show and let me know whether or not you would like your real name read or an alias to maintain confidentiality. Thank you guys all again so much for your support. Until next time, my friends. See ya.